Dale Salina.
And I'm Gerald Lauber from Topeka.
Randy Dahl, Leon.
Roger Marshall, Great Bend.
Robert Wilson, Pittsburgh.
Sheila Camus, Commission Secretary.
Robert Johnson, Topeka. Keith Saxon, Pratt.
Linda Craighead, Topeka.
Todd Workman, Topeka.
Chris Timeson, Legal Counsel.
Okay. First of all, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I do have a correction. John Solosky will present item number 7 on public lands instead of Brad Simpson.
Okay. Any more? Can you hear that better?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve those minutes.
It was just the agenda. I have a correction for the minutes too.
Okay.
On page 14, Steve Sorensen's comment should read, Pope and Young will not certify deer taken with a range finder attached to a bow instead of night scope.
Okay.
Is that all?
Yes, that's all.
I moved with those corrections.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, this is the time where we will have an opportunity for general public comment on non-agenda items. There's several items on the agenda that I know some people are interested in. So, yes, sir? Right. I kind of assumed, and that is going to be in later on this afternoon. It is on the agenda, and it doesn't say anything. It's under fur bearer regulations.
Mr. Chair, I told him that this would be the time, so it's my mistake. Sorry.
Well, and I appreciate that, but it'd probably be easier to go ahead and have it when we actually discuss and workshop the idea, because I think there will be more comments. Any discussion on non-agenda items? Yes? Would you come?
The one allowing, if you're an American Indian, to have a license to hunt fish for free. And in it, you guys state that if the tribe is, I got rejected here because my tribe is not federally recognized, but my tribe is recognized at the state level. And you guys give licenses based off of a state level. And I don't understand why I can't get my license. So the thing I'm asking you guys to do is add it in to read that it says you can get a license if you are state or federally recognized tribe.
Okay, this is somewhat of a new one for me.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The issue is it's a statutory issue, so it would require a legislative change. The legislature's the body that determines whether or not state or federal would be recognized. So what I would suggest is that you contact your legislator, for one, and it's something that we can take a look at.
I mean, but I want to know if there's any power you guys had in
This is a statute rather than a regulation?
It's a statute that would require legislative change.
Yeah, we couldn't make a change on that ourselves. It's statutory.
So there's nothing you guys can do?
I don't know exactly what we could. Chris?
Again, it's going to require the legislature to change it. So what I'm suggesting is you contact your legislator and we'll take a look at it. And there's a Native American liaison in the governor's office we can discuss the issue with.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make you guys aware of that.
Okay.
See if you guys can talk to them.
Help us understand it just a bit more. So right now, you're saying that what is the tribe you're in question?
The Lipan Apache tribe of Texas. And it's recognized by the state, but not at a federal level. And the
Okay.
government wrote an 80-page document why my tribe should be federally recognized. And they do that with a bunch of small tribes.
Yeah.
But the big thing here is that I'm arguing about is if a tribe is recognized at a state level and licenses are given at a state, we should have our license.
So you're recognized at the state level, but not at the federal level?
Yeah.
Why do you think they're not recognized at the federal level?
Smaller tribes are oftentimes not.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't want to get into all that. I mean, the tribe is constantly in federal courthouses
Okay.
fighting it, and I think it's all a monetary issue here.
Okay.
And where are you from?
I was born in Kansas City, Missouri.
And what's your name, sir?
David Garcia.
Thank you.
Is that all?
Just so you understand that we don't write laws.
Okay.
So
I didn't know if you guys had any power to talk to legislation and
the same power you do.
oh, really? Okay.
Sometimes less.
Sometimes less.
Okay. So I can talk to somebody to tell me who to write?
Well, do you know who your legislator is in the state of Kansas?
Yeah.
Do you live in Kansas now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Where in Kansas do you live?
Johnson County.
Okay. So why don't you contact me on a break, and I'll give you
Okay.
my card, and I can send you, or I can send you the right direction where you can plug in your address, and it'll tell you who your
Representative Hewitt.
legislator is.
Okay.
All right?
All right, thank you.
That's what it is.
All right. Any more comments on non-agenda items? Well, let's roll here. Robin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not a lot has changed on the fiscal picture since your last meeting, so I'm going to be very brief. The legislature has started to come back. Ways and Means Committee's in town this week, and of course how the legislature ends up with the governor's tax package is going to have a lot to do with the fiscal issues the state has. The consensus estimators just met, and they did not change revenues a lot from what was expected. Of course, if the tax package that was passed goes into effect July the 1st and nothing's done to offset that, it's going to be a significant issue. The governor, if you've noticed, is getting around the state a lot, pushing his proposal, which is to not sunset the sales tax, which was scheduled to sunset early July, and that's the governor's proposal, and he also wants to then bring state income tax down, and the Senate has supported the governor on that, and the House has a different view. So it will not be until the legislature is met till we'll kind of know where the legislature is. And I think we mentioned the last time that they did sweep some of our cabin revenue money, $500,000 for this year. We're still talking to them about that, and hopefully we will get that restored. The main thing that we're looking at right now from the standpoint of the agency, by and large, is the move we made to the Park Passport last year and making it very difficult for us to project those revenues. As of the end of March, we're running pretty close to what we did last year. So far, this fiscal year has not been a bad year for the parks, but the conversion to the Park Passport is still an unknown. I think the last numbers we got, Linda, I think we're approaching 4% statewide. 4% of the people registering their cars are opting to get the new Park Passport. We'd projected 10%, so we don't know really where that's all going to shake out because we're still getting the revenues. If you compare the month-by-month revenues, we're running very close revenue-wise to what we were doing previously. So it's just, what I think we're seeing some very dedicated park folks are going ahead and getting the park passport, but I don't think that we've really brought a significant number of new people yet, but it's still pretty early to tell, and we get a report at the end of every month, and so we'll get another report here at the end of April and begin to have a little clearer picture. With that, I'd stand for any questions if there was anything in particular that the commission might have had a question on.
Anybody have any questions for Secretary Jennison?
Thank you.
Okay. Chris?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we are on legislative break, so it's basically about a month off. Senate Ways and Means Committee came back today, and so they're going to start talking about the budget side on the Senate, and then I think the House Appropriations Committee comes back next week, and then the full legislature comes back on May the 8th. And the department did have 4 initiatives this year, and I'll go through the bills. This is the first year of a 2-year cycle, so the bills are alive again next year, unless something happens like they've been stricken from the calendar. So Senate Bill 49 was a department initiative, and it dealt with boating under the influence, and the department proposed that the time period would increase from 2 to 3 hours after the operation of a vehicle consistent with DUI law in the state. And then there were some technical changes that had to be made to the bill. And that went through the Senate, passed out of the Senate rather handily, got to the House, and passed out of the House committee rather easily. And then on the House calendar, it sat and ultimately was stricken from House General Orders based on some time constraints. And we worked the committee, there was a conference committee, and because the bill's been passed by one House, it can be incorporated into a conference committee report on another bill that's passed both houses. It becomes a conferenceable item, and we were successful in getting it conferenced into another bill, which is on our website, and that's House Bill 2218. So House Bill 2218 ultimately did pass the Senate. Once a conference committee report's agreed on and a bill's been through both houses, it also has to go back through both houses on the conference committee report adoption. And the bill's been through the Senate. Presumably, when it comes back, it will go through the House. So it appears that that will pass. Senate Bill 50 was also a department initiative, and it would have required a phase-in on voter education, had a hearing back in January, and there just wasn't support from the Senate committee chair to move the bill forward. Senate Bill 57 was not a department initiative. It deals with domesticated deer, and the Department of Agriculture is trying to update the statutes related to domesticated deer. The provisions in there that pertain to the department would allow us to also enforce the domesticated deer statutes upon request of the Department of Agriculture. Ultimately, the bill was signed by the governor April 16th. Senate Bill 74 would have prevented the Department of Corrections from producing modular homes, and that would have included our cabins if we were building cabins currently in the Department of Corrections facilities. Bill had a hearing, and we requested an exemption related to the cabins, and there was an exemption in the Senate that passed, and then ultimately it went to the House Commerce Committee and passed out of the House unamended and went to the governor for signature, which he signed April the 10th. Senate Bill 83, which is also House Bill 2244 in the legislative process, and that was a department initiative. And if you recall, there was a ballot initiative that we helped get passed last year related to vessel taxes, and then that allowed the legislature to come back this year and make a change in the level of taxation for vessels. So the legislature came back this year, and we proposed that we would phase out vessel taxes over a 3-year period to 0. That didn't seem to fly very well with the committee. They referred it to a subcommittee. The subcommittee made some changes and took it down to an 11.5% valuation for the bottom end over a 6-year period. When it came back to the full committee amended it to take it to 11.5% valuation next year and 5% for each year thereafter in 2015. And that passed out of the House rather handily. Then, because it was so late in the session, but because we talked about bills being conferenceable items, there was a tax package in Senate Bill 83, brings me back to Senate Bill 83, where the provisions of House Bill 2244 were conferenced into Senate Bill 83. That went back through both houses of the legislature, and the governor signed it on April 16th. So this year, boat taxes will be the same at a 30% fair market valuation. Next year it goes to 11.5%, and then the year after that it goes to 5%. Senate Bill 94 dealt with muzzleloader definitions, making it consistent with federal law. The bill didn't have a hearing and didn't go anywhere. Senate Bill 223 dealt with crossbows during the big game archery season. It was scheduled for a hearing and then was canceled right before the last commission meeting that we had. House Bill 2030 was a department initiative again, and it dealt with wounded warrior deer permits, and it's to accommodate some last-minute requests that we've had the last several years to do shows on using individuals who were wounded in combat, and at that point we had no deer permits left. So this will be to accommodate individuals who either don't get a permit through the draw or a leftover non-resident permit, because obviously residents can purchase over the counter. And then if there's more than the allotted 10, then we'll have to have a drawing with a deadline. If the deadline comes and there aren't that many applicants, then we'll issue them first come, first serve until they're gone. House Bill 2052 started out as unlawful discharge of a firearm within the city limits, and there was an exemption in there for programs that were authorized by the department. That bill ultimately passed out of the House, went to the Senate. In the Senate, the bill was amended to become a mega gun bill. Essentially, the provisions that dealt with discharge of a firearm in the city limits were still there. It would have made it a crime to discharge a firearm in the city limits unless it's one of the enumerated exemptions. So all these other firearm-related bills, concealed carry stuff, all was lumped into that one bill, and ultimately the conference committee report was adopted by both houses, and the bill was signed by the governor on April 16th. Oh, and I didn't say that the Wounded Warrior Deer Permit bill was signed by the governor April 2nd. House Bill 2076 would have exempted any honorably discharged veteran from who had 30% more service-connected disability, 30% or more, from hunting license fees. The department did oppose the bill. It had a hearing. Obviously, that costs us not only state funds but federal funds, and currently there's a program that provides for those individuals where state general fund is allocated, so the licenses are still paid for and we can still draw federal funds based upon a license sale. And the last thing I'll cover is House Bill 2362, which would have amended the Threatened and Endangered Species Conservation Act, significantly changing how we handle operations related to threatened and endangered species in our state. Bill had a hearing. The department does oppose the bill. It's obviously not going anywhere at this point, but it's still alive for next year. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
I have one question on Senate Bill 74. I'm still confused. At the end of the day, can the Department of Corrections build modular homes legally or not?
They can't build modular homes, but they can build small buildings under 1,000 square feet, which would maybe be a shed or it might be one of our cabins.
Okay.
But they can't build anything over 1,000 square feet.
That's the magic.
Chris, on the watercraft, bill, tell me again how many Oklahoma registrations have Kansas addresses?
I think the last, I don't know if Dan Heskett's in the room or not, I haven't seen him today, but it's, somewhere in the 6 to 8 to 10 range, 10,000. So it's a pretty significant number. We had asked for an open records request from the state a couple years ago, how many registrations are heading back to Kansas. The actual, registration form comes back here. I mean, some of those are obviously legitimate, and then some, I think that one would surmise that some of those are obviously not legitimate, that they're registered there but used on Kansas waters. And we're hoping, obviously, with the reduction in vessel taxes, that those people will bring their boats back and register them here.
Anybody else have any questions for Chris?
Chris, I've got three. First of all, Senate Bill 223 on the crossbows and big game. Since we took the action that we took, are we to assume then that they're not going to take any more action on this?
That's what I would understand. I would think that they're not moving on that.
Okay. On House Bill 2052, and I'm going to specifically talk about Unit 19 in the deer zone. If we've got a Unit 19 and it's allowed, the department allows deer hunting in 19, which encompasses a big part of Kansas City, can you shoot a deer with a gun?
Still have to have the permission of the local municipality. So where we've worked with those local municipalities and developed programs, those will still be authorized, but it's both the department and the municipality have to authorize it.
Okay.
So, I mean, where we have open hunting, as long as the city's doing it or allows it, then it'll be able to, it's just like it is now.
Okay.
Preserves what's there now.
And the Senate Resolution 1711 on the black-footed ferrets, are they watching us to take some sort of action? Because I know we've talked about this before.
Well, the resolution opposed a safe harbor agreement, which Keith is probably much more knowledgeable on than I. The Senate passed a resolution that was a much watered down version of what was introduced. And, resolutions are not binding. They're just a resolution saying, hey, I oppose the safe harbor agreement. We get a lot of resolutions. I don't know that there's a huge amount of stock put into those when they're passed and mailed out.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any reason we should just kind of skirt that and stay out of the middle of that fight?
Well, Robin testified as neutral on it.
I don't think we can win by getting on either side very strong.
It certainly doesn't behoove you to waste a lot of political capital on something that has little or no force of law.
Yeah, I understand. Okay. Any other questions for Chris? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move into the general discussion. Lincoln Street Art River Project update. Jessica?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Commission, thank you for letting me update everyone on this project today.
We need to probably move what we can see.
Good. All right. So I was basically asked to give everyone an update on this humongous project of rebuilding the Lincoln Street Dam, and with that project it included Fish Passage and also a center flume within that Fish Passage, which I'll talk about more here in just a second, to increase access and increase safety for paddlers using the river. So just to begin with, this was a very complicated project, started several years ago. It took a lot of a lot of collaboration through several different state, federal, and local agencies, engineers, hydrologists, biologists. I'm the district fisheries biologist who works here in Sedgwick County for Wildlife and Parks, and so my part of this was mostly in a coordination effort, and thank goodness there are many people out there who know far more about fish passage and engineering than I do. So I'm going to focus a lot on the people and the fish part of this project. So as many of you know, our river is home to several fish species that require the river to have long reaches of continuous flow to reproduce. And anytime we have a dam, it breaks up that continuity of flow. Many of the fish species here in Kansas, native species, make seasonal migrations up and down the rivers to reproduce and feed. And some of these species swim upstream to lay their eggs, while others move downstream in search of food. Some of them even have eggs that float in the current along with the food source. And eggs hatch within 24 to 28 hours, depending on the species. That's a very quick turnaround. But the newly hatched young stay in the river current for another couple days, feasting on available food. So these movements up and down the river increase the chance of survival for the entire species within the river's ecosystem, and fish passages around dams obviously can help benefit the wildlife and fish in the river. So just in summary, without the long reaches of large river systems, many of these fish could be gone forever. In fact, I'll talk about just here in a minute about which species are actually threatened and endangered within the Arkansas River here in Wichita. So we need to take care of those species, take extra care with those species that are listed as threatened and endangered, and protect those shrinking populations. So in the past, below the dam, about 20,000 individual fish were gathered in May of 2012 during normal sampling efforts done by myself and some staff in the Ecological Services Division of Wildlife and Parks. This was the highest number of, this sample included the highest number of species actually collected to date, so that was pretty exciting. The Lincoln Street Dam was built in the early to mid 60s here in Wichita. Intensive monitoring efforts as far as species richness and biodiversity were started in 1994, and since that time there are many species documented below the dam that have not been documented above. So we do know that that dam is definitely a barrier to fish migration. The average number of species in the past collected below the dam is 17, with the average collected above being 9. So you can see that there actually is a big difference. And I'm going to briefly go through this. Oh, clicker's not working great. I'm going to briefly go through the technical drawings, but as you can see, the fish pad, this is the dam here. This is upstream. This is downstream. So this is north. This is south. And the fish passage and kayak passage or paddling passage structure actually runs here, most of it being above the dam and part of it being below. And then this is actually Lincoln Street, where the old dam used to be. So this dam was built during a time when environmental effects were not as fully considered as they are now, and so it presented a barrier to several natural river functions, including that fish migration that I just spoke about. The bridge had deteriorated to the point that major structural rehabilitation and full replacement was necessary. And because the dam sat directly under the bridge there in the past, right underneath Lincoln Street, getting to it and maintaining it was nearly impossible for the City of Wichita's Public Works Department. So it was going to be a lot more cost-effective just to replace the dam. And that is ultimately what was decided. And so this is just an up-close kind of view of the schematic of the fish passage structure. There's a central flume that goes through that allows boats to pass, and then these tiny little slots on the sides are the fish ladder. So it's on both sides. And then there's just a little bit closer look. So this is what it looks like in person. This is what it looked like about 2 weeks ago. And I just wanted to put these pictures up because I wanted to impress upon you the size of this structure. It's about 200 feet long, which doesn't sound very big, But I took these two average-sized females and put them at the top of it and took a picture looking up. So they're right there, and then this is a close-up. So you can kind of see how big it really is. It's quite impressive. So some of the species that we're targeting are these threatened and endangered species that live in the Arkansas River, some of which have not been documented in recent years, but still many of which have been documented below the dam, but again, not above. So the Arkansas darter, Arkansas River shiner, silver chub, plains minnow, and Arkansas River speckled chub are all species that we're targeting with part of the fish passage. But again, we want to make sure that we're serving the sportsmen with this project too, and so some of the sport fish species, up to 40 total species total, will be benefited by this fish passage structure. And there's a list of some of them, including channel catfish, largemouth bass, flathead catfish, and on and on. So that's a lot of biodiversity that's going to be affected by this project. So what's next? The river was raised slowly within the last few days. Monday, I think, was when it reached its full capacity, and the fish passage and kayak passage is full now. So it's actually functioning. I was down there the other day. People were using it. People were fishing, and I observed several species of fish using the middle of it, larger species of fish using the middle of it to migrate upstream. So it's kind of exciting that we did this just at a time when fish migration is starting. So as far as the population, we're going to be monitoring the species use and which species are using it. Maybe any incident mortality, fish that got worn out trying to go up the fish ladder, and also the possibility of increased predation on some species. Maybe they were a little bit protected before they could make it up above the dam, and now there are predators with open mouths waiting for them to go up there. So we don't know for sure exactly how that's going to work out. But we do also want to do some modeling and look at maybe possibility of restoring even more connectivity to the river with the 21st Street Dam being a next target project. We can also take a look at some sediment flows and some geomorphology. And this is a very, very important part of this because this fish ladder and fish passage is the first of its kind in Kansas. We are making history with this. And that basically meant we had to start from scratch. Most fish ladders in the United States have been built with salmon and trout species in mind over very, very large dams. And this one obviously is quite different because the Arkansas River is a small, in comparison to other large rivers in the United States, a small sandy braided stream. And so the design for this was very, very innovative, and it is the first and only of its kind so far. So a lot of evaluation as far as fish species and geomorphology and that kind of stuff is going to be imperative going forward with this project. So one of the things we're talking about, possibly with a state college and with Ecological Services with Wildlife and Parks, is the use of pit tags. Those are passive integrated transponders. Many researchers use these tags in fish to monitor movement, and basically it just involves implanting this transponder into the fish and then allowing the fish to swim about as it normally would, and then placing sensors within the fish passage structure to record whether or not that particular fish is using the fish passage. So that's one of the ideas that we have. It is dependent upon the species and size of the animal and size, as far as the size of the tag, but that's one idea that we are thinking about for evaluation. So this is a close-up of the fish passage slots, those little slots on either side of the passage that I told you about. These plates are movable, and we made them that way because we don't know how best this is going to benefit those species, whether it's going to be benefiting them in the best way possible. So we are able to move those and adjust those and make adjustments if we find out that what we have right now is not working. These little openings right here are about the size of a checkbook, and they allow those smaller fish, like I said, to go forward just a little bit, rest, go forward just a little bit, and rest, and hopefully help them make it all the way up above the dam. So in addition to the pit tag monitoring and things like that, right now what we're doing is population sampling. We have baseline data from 1994, and going forward, we're going to be monitoring those species, the species richness and the presence and absence of species above and below the dam. Last year in June, the Wichita River Festival happened, as it does every year, and the dam was raised for a 2-week period during the River Fest last year. We did do some sampling this year and found documented 3 species above the dam that had not ever been documented before since the 60s. So we know that it's starting to work. The potential is really there for it to work, and we're very excited about that. So we'll be continuing to sample those populations above and below and comparing that to historical data. And then this is just a picture of some of the sampling efforts that have gone on. Now to the people portion of it, now that we've talked about the fish. Obviously, low-head dams present a very obvious danger to paddlers and even anglers fishing below the dam. So the goal of this fish passage and paddling passage was also to make it safer for people who were paddling down the Arkansas River here in Wichita. And so it does provide some, increase the safety for paddlers, increase some of the recreation possibilities. As you can see, that's the closest thing to white water we've got here in Kansas, probably. And the kayakers in the area who have been using it and who have been looking forward to this project are very, very excited about that. It also, by allowing the fish to move up and down the river as freely as they could before the dam was put in, or hopefully in some way near as freely as they were before the dam was put in, it's going to increase access for anglers, increase opportunity for anglers above and below the dam, and also create some additional habitat. So what's next for that? All right, more evaluation, monitoring, seeing who is using it, and then also maybe looking at some opportunities to generate revenue. This would be a neat opportunity for because so much of the river is connected now for new businesses to take hold. Kayak and canoe rental and things like that are a possibility, and maybe even some fishing trips. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. There is some very nice signage down there at the river that explains how the fish passage works and how to use the boat passage. And if you were familiar, I wish I had a before picture, because the difference in what the city has done here to make this look inviting and make it look like a wonderful place to recreate is astounding. Before, it was pretty nondescript. It wasn't probably a place many people would go, not places families would hang out or go walking, but with the addition of that sidewalk, which goes almost all the way downtown, and the color and the landscaping that's been done down there, it's very, very inviting. And I've actually observed myself quite a bit more people using it, a wider variety of people using it down there, anglers and paddlers, and other uses down there. So I think it's really, really improved the aesthetics of that. And then, of course, there's plenty of signage showing people what part is the boat pass and what part is the dam, and so it should be a very safe way for people to go down that. All right, so in summary, the goal of this project was to encourage the fish migration upstream, provide safer passage for boating, improve the maintainability for the dam and the bridge, and enhance the river's status as a destination for recreation. Public support for this project is strong. I really have not heard very many negative comments. Of course, there always are a few, but the support for this has really been overwhelming. The project, like I said, will maintain some aesthetics for the downtown area, provide additional access for people who fish, provide public parking and formal access for all river users. And the partners of this project are really looking forward to the renewed public interest in a more accessible and more natural Arkansas River. This project will continue to help our river become an increasingly important part of our urban landscape. So with that, I'd like to thank you again for letting me talk about this today, and also thank the partners without whom this project would not have been possible. This project was funded by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, put in some funding for the fish passage portion. Coast Guard grant monies were used through the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. About $500,000 was put in with those grants towards that, and then the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks also put about $150,000 in from our river access money into this project. The Arkansas River Coalition is a local group that has greatly supported this project, and they were the first ones out there when the fish passage filled to take their kayaks down it. The city of Wichita bore the brunt of the expense for this. It was about a $7.5 million project, and it was city engineers and public works worked very hard to gain funding and make all the planning for this. So again, I'd like to thank all of those folks, and I would be happy to take any questions if you have any, and if I haven't talked too long.
Jessica, what was the original purpose of the dams when they were built in the 60s or whenever?
This dam was built in part for stormwater control down through downtown Wichita. There is a very long stretch of the river that meanders through Wichita, and so part of it was that, and then part of it also was to raise the level of the water within the city for recreational purposes. Yes.
You did a great job, and I appreciate it. I have one quick question. What's the purpose of the dam at 21st Street?
That would be a question that would be better answered by somebody from the city of Wichita. I don't know the original. Doug knows.
It's a drainage control structure so that it doesn't tap that into the dike. It's to stabilize the bottom of the river so it doesn't tap back into the dikes where the water comes to the floodway into the city.
Changes in fishing regulations for next calendar year. I'm happy to report we're not trying to do much in the way of changes this year. What I have to discuss with you
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission and the visiting public. For state parks, this is a new initiative that we'd like to explore. It is to our endeavors.
Linda, will these posted notices be in more than one language?
Oh, that's a good question.
Especially in southwest Kansas, we might need more
No.
than 2 languages.
Typically, we put those all in English.
Oh,
Right.
I might suggest Spanish, and in southwest Kansas, you might consider Somali and a Burmese language or 2.
These are, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yeah.
These are, it would just be bringing into regulation things that are already out there for posted notice. It's not like it's new initiatives.
Right, I understand that, but
So
for
these
future
are-
thinking.
These are, it's the same principle with public lands where we brought in a reference document, and took those posted notice principles and put them into reference documents so the public could comment on them,
Oh,
as
I
well
see.
as the enforceability. There are some county attorneys who are unwilling or less than happy to prosecute a posted notice violation
Okay.
unless it has the force of regulation. And this is just a long-term project that we're finally getting to. It took 6 years or so to get the public land stuff done, and we've been working on this for a year or so. And
All right, thank you.
Any more questions?
Okay, thank you, Landon.
Wait,
Robert had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On the day use only, do you have an idea on the background of what's brought that about?
You know, we do have areas that we strictly don't allow any camping. So that's what that means.
Okay.
It's just for day use only and no
Okay.
camping.
All right, thank you.
Mhm. Thank you.
Okay, late migratory bird seasons, Tom. And do you have a PowerPoint? No, sir. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Today I'll be speaking about the late migratory game bird seasons and Fish and Wildlife Service developed frameworks from which states can develop migratory game bird seasons. These frameworks provide the earliest and latest dates a season may be held, the maximum number of days, and the bag and possession limit. Frameworks for the 2013-2014 will not be available until the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Service Regulation Committee meeting August 1st. However, since 1995, adapted harvest management process has been used to set duck harvest regulations. Adapted harvest management provides 4 regulatory packages from which season prescriptions are provided. Those 4 regulatory alternatives include a liberal season, moderate season, restrictive season, and a closed seasons, where they have a variable number of days and bag limits. They are based off habitat, population, and harvest variables. Since first implemented for the 1996-97 seasons, we have remained in the liberal package. With the current high number record duck populations and the current precipitation levels in the Prairie Pothole region, we're again expecting to be in the liberal package. The package provides 97 hunting days for the High Plains unit, and for the 3 zones within the Low Plains unit, 74 days, and that map was provided in the briefing book item. It allows a bag limit of 6 birds with some species restrictions that again are listed in the briefing book item. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service frameworks also establish 2 youth waterfowling hunting days, and they must be held within 14 days of the season or within any split. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service frameworks for Canada geese and light geese, those light snow geese and Ross's geese, for 107 hunting days. This is the maximum allowed by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. For white-fronted geese, we have the option of either having a 1 bird bag limit for 88 days or a 2 bird bag limit for 74 days. Provided in the briefing item is their considerations for falconry waterfowl seasons and a table of historic duck season dates. Staff recommendations will be presented at the June meeting and will be for board adoption at the August 1st meeting in the Yates Center. And with that, I'll stand any questions.
Tom, I've got a question, just in case that shocked you.
Please.
Did you give us your proposed season dates at the last meeting?
No. What was presented for last commission meeting was for the general discussion was for the general September's teal season, and that is part of the workshop session today where staff recommendations were provided. So it won't be until the June meeting in Garden City that the staff recommendations for the general duck and goose seasons will be presented.
Okay. With the High Plains having 97 days and the Low Plains having 74 in a liberal package, you're anticipating that to be the case again this year without any major changes?
Correct. Last year we had record duck counts, a high fall flight forecast, and if you look at the weather in the prairie pottle regions of the Dakotas and central Canada, you can see that they have an abundance of precipitation in both snow melt and rain.
Okay. The 2-day youth season that the feds give us, that is 2 additional days outside these parameters. Is that correct?
Correct. That's in addition to the 97 days in the High Plains and 74 days in the Low Plains. However, we still must remain within the 107 maximum limit by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act.
Okay. Your committee, your waterfowl committee, who does that consist of?
Sure. It is. It has 2 migratory game bird specialists, myself and Rich Schulteis. It has 1 district biologist from each of our 5 regions. Then it has.
Who are they?
It would be Jeff Rue for Region 4, Aaron Ball from Region 3. Might need a little help. For Region 1, it's Wes Sowers, and so I'm missing Region 5. 2. Would have to get back to you on those. I'd have to look it up.
Would you mind sending me an email with who all is on that?
Sure. Then, in addition of those district biologists, we have the managers from our major waterfall areas, such as Carl Grover from Cheyenne Bottoms, Monty Monback from Neosho, Carl Cairo from Meridazine, and so on.
Okay.
Then we have 2 associate members. One is Tim Menard from Fish and Wildlife Service. He's our liaison for the National Wildlife Rescue System here in Kansas. And then Josh Williams with Ducks Unlimited. And those are non-voting members.
When and who's in charge? You're in charge of this committee?
I chair the committee, correct.
Okay. You report to nobody else then? On this committee, I'm talking about.
On the committee, correct. My recommendations go through my supervisor, Mike Mitchner, Joe Kramer, then on to Keith Sexton as well.
Okay. With that being said, just because of the small amount of controversy that we had last year with the southeast zone, would you be open to maybe a recommendation, maybe a consensus, if we can have some kind of informal discussion here today with a commission recommendation to you as the head of the committee for proposed dates?
We always look for feedback, but however, anything outside of normal feedback processes, I would have to refer to my supervisors.
Well, that's all we're looking for is a little feedback. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, if I could address that, I think I really believe what Commissioner Budd is asking is what takes place. I just think it's important for our natural resource professionals to get together and make a recommendation. And it comes up through then our administrative process. It'll go to Joe, it goes to Keith, then Keith talks to me, and we have a first shot at saying, you guys are screwed up, and we're going to do something else, and then it goes to the commission. And I really think that the procedure we have is the best procedure, where we give our natural resource guys a chance to give us their best recommendations based on their expertise in the field, with, as was noted, some ex officio folks that have some expertise in the field. We look at it from an administrative standpoint, and more than likely we're not going to change it, and then it goes to the commission, where you guys have a different, you have a constituency that you all recommend, and then I think that you guys either put your stamp of approval on it or do what was done last year and bring in your perspective and modify it. I really think that's the best way, and I think that it's better that our natural resource professionals do what they do, and then it works up through the chain, and you all either accept it or modify it. And that'd be the way that I think that we'll continue to operate that.
Okay. With that being said, I'm going to tell you what I think.
That's your brother.
Thank you. Thank you. After the much discussion last year and probably understanding both sides, and it was a little difficult dealing with this last year out in Great Bend. Tom, I'm gonna give you this thought after looking at it almost a year later and probably from both sides a little closer. What I would like to see specifically in the southeast zone, first of all, would be an October 26th and 27th youth opener, youth season. We have a regular duck season opener on the 2nd and 3rd, which we don't get a conflict with the pheasant opener that way. And then we open the regular duck season on November 16th and run it through the 26th, which is the last weekend that I believe they allow us to run. That would give us 74 days. That would give us the 2 days over and above that for the youth. It would give the early season hunters, if they're involved in the youth season, it'll give them two opening weekends. They can then pheasant hunt the following weekend, and the following weekend after that, then they can start hunting waterfowl again. I don't know. Once again, I'm going to respect the Secretary's opinion of the process, and if another commissioner's got an opinion, I suppose they can give it to you. I was just looking for, rather than to have that kind of heated discussion, that we try to avoid that this year, and maybe we can talk through it, is what I was looking for.
I might say that since I was on the other end of that heated discussion last year, had this been the situation last year, it wouldn't have been so heated. And I appreciate your thoughts on that. And I do think Secretary Jennison is correct on the procedure that which we do it. But as many of you know, I wanted at least a weekend last year in early November when it didn't conflict with the opening day, primarily because a lot of the area that I had to know a lot of people from is in the extreme northern area of the southeast zone. So I think I detected a bit of compromise there, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. And Roger, I know there was a lot of discussion from the guys out in Great Bend about doing something, and I've been contacted by a lot of them. I'm sure you have as well, and I don't know if you've got an opinion or don't have an opinion.
My opinion is that there's lots of opinions out there, and it's going to be very hard to make this perfect for everybody unless we get about 10 more hunting days. My only thought was, is there room on this early committee for a couple of hunters from each one of these zones? It just seems like the horse is out of the barn by the time it gets to us. And I do think hunters view it differently than the wildlife managers of these projects. If I've heard anything, I've heard the hunters not necessarily agreeing with some of the managers. And I'm not saying anyone was right or wrong.
Sure.
And how do you choose those two people to represent that area? I don't know.
The disadvantage would be, Roger, that's 10 more people
exactly
on the committee, and who are going to want to meet at times different than what a lot of state people can meet. And while I understand that, I guess I'm sort of leaning towards doing it the way it's been presented. But I think that it's important, particularly since this is getting more and more controversy, that we begin to have some of these discussions earlier, like we're doing today, so that we don't have one meeting to have a knockdown, drag-out workshop and then vote the next meeting. And so I think you start getting so many people, and then I would rather keep it with the professionals the way we have it now myself. Although we found out last year I only have one vote.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The representative from Ducks Unlimited, that's why we have him there, because he probably has more hunter contacts than any other individual throughout the state. We don't have members of the general public on our other committees, but, we do the best we can to solicit feedback from all. Within the briefing book item for the June meeting will be the results of not only last year's hunter survey, but we surveyed hunters regards to that zone again this year. We sent out about 3,400 surveys. We have a significant return rate, and we're just starting the data analysis on that now. But we will provide a lot more information available in the June packet. This is just us announcing that we are accepting comments regarding the season.
And the June packet will have harvest estimates?
It will have population, some of the early population estimates, some of our historic harvest information, some of the results from our hunter surveys.
The hunter surveys have current last year harvest numbers?
The harvest numbers will actually come from Fish and Wildlife Service.
When will we see those?
Those usually are usually come out in late June, early July. From the final numbers, but however, we will work with Fish and Wildlife Service to look at preliminary numbers.
What you are saying is, though, we would have hunter preferences from the
correct. You will definitely have information.
3,400 surveys,
and as well as the 6,500 surveys that were sent out last year.
Well, I definitely agree with Commissioner Budd. I'd like to not have it as controversial, although controversy isn't the end of the world.
Agreed.
And so I think my recommendation is that you come back with us as you plan to do, not depreciating Roger's thoughts, but I think at this point we have a certain amount of time we have to deal with, and I think let's go ahead and do it this way, and then we'll, in June, see what dates you recommended. Anybody else have any thoughts on the commission?
I've got a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
In this kind of consensus, we're talking, we got a youth opener, then we have a regular duck season opener November 2nd and 3rd. Then we have a split. Is that what I understand?
That's what he was.
Is that, I mean,
that was my suggestion.
I understand that,
Yes.
yeah. But we have a November 2nd and 3rd as an opener. Then we have a split of how many days? I guess I missed that.
12 days.
We have a 12-day split in there? And then it opens again November 16?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
It'd be a similar structure to what we had this year, with the exception of the opening first 2 days of a Thursday, Friday would be a Saturday, Sunday.
Okay.
I think last year the biggest, or one of the biggest concerns was a weekday opener and not having an early season opener before the, whatever it was last year, the 14th, 15th, 16th. And that's why I tried to address all those concerns in this, and I appreciate you considering them, Tom.
Thank you.
Is there any comments from the public? Any more from the commission?
Oh, quick question. We can only have one split. Is that right?
Correct. In the low plain, the 3 low plain zones, we can have only one split or 2 segments.
Okay.
You get an advantage on this, Roger. You get 20-some more days than we do.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Without water.
Okay, is there any more questions from Tom? For Tom? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Like genetics, that's what you're dealt.
Okay, Tom, why don't you go ahead with the early migratory, and then eventually here we'll take a break.
September teal seasons were established to take advantage of additional harvest opportunities on early migrating species. Teal are one of the earliest migrating species through Kansas, with most migrating through Kansas prior to the general duck season. Again, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service sets the frameworks, and they will be published in June 20th for September teal. A September teal season being held for 9 days when the blue-winged teal population is between 3.7 and 4.6 million birds. When the population is above 4.7 million blue-winged teal, we can hold a 16-day season. And based off of last year's blue-winged teal estimate of 19.2 million birds, and again, the very good spring habitat conditions in the prairie pothole region, we're again expecting a 16-day season for September teal. However, there's a catch in the high plains zone, and that is the area west of 283. As mentioned earlier, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act only allows 107 days for any one given species. So with the general duck season of 97 days coupled with the 2 youth days, that only leaves 8 days before we reach this maximum. However, for the past 3 years, we have adopted a 9-day teal season, which resulted in a 96-day regular duck season in the high plains zone to meet this criteria. Presenting the briefing book item is the last year's federal frameworks. Again, we're expecting the federal frameworks for these to be similar. There is some possibilities with the release of a teal harvest assessment that things in bag and possession limit may change, but however, we will not know that until the June 20th meeting. So the dates can be held between September 1st and September 30th. Again, we're looking at a 16-day season, 4 birds daily and 8 possession. Again, that may change at the June 20th U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Regulation Committee meeting, and shooting hours 1/2 hour before sunset. In the briefing book item, I've included his historic season dates and seasons started or restarted in 1992, as well as teal harvest. For the low plains zone, the staff recommendation is a 19-day season that will run from September 7th through September 22nd. In the high plains unit, it would be a 9-day season from September 14th to September 22nd. Again, this will result in a loss of 1 hunting day in the high plains unit. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Tom, why, and there's got to be some logic to this, but why would the high plains have 96, 97 days, the low plains have 74 days allowable during a regular duck season, yet we get a 16-day low plains teal season?
Sure. The high plains unit was established in the late 1960s as a high plains mallard unit, and it was to take advantage of under-harvested mallard populations or segment of mallard populations for that unit. There's lower hunter density, which results in lower harvest. So this is kind of the same thing as this disparity in harvest is kind of the same thing as why the Mississippi flyway and Atlantic flyway has 60 days and the Pacific flyway has 107. So it's just due to that disparity in harvest.
And the feds set the number of days.
Correct. That's part of the Fish and Wildlife Service framework.
Okay, thank you.
They have not changed any boundaries or anything regarding the high plains unit since it was established in, I think we offered it first year in 1972.
Okay, thanks.
Tom, on the table 1 of the hunter harvest, those years where we had 9 hunting days, those were when we had the moderate package?
No, those are based off of when the teal population was in between that range of 3.3 million and 4.6 million. So we've been in the liberal package since 1996. So these are based off of teal numbers. Teal numbers have been steadily increasing. I said now we're at 9.2 million. They're the second most numerous water duck species behind mallards, which are about a little over 10 million.
But depending upon their numbers is what we get the
correct. That sets the packages.
Because there is some disparity.
It's probably hunting 9 days. They shot just as many.
Yeah. Okay, anybody have any more questions for Tom on this one? Any questions, comments from the public? All right.
Thank you for your time.
Chris, you want to talk about agro-tourism?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, the agritourism regulations are just a transfer of regulations from the Department of Commerce that are coming over to our department through when the tourism division came to Wildlife and Parks. And so there was an ERO issued by the governor, ERO number 36. The legislature didn't take action on it, so it became law. Last year there was a trailer bill that came along which transferred the authorities and changed the name of the department in all the statutes that are applicable to the department. And now we're just transferring those. There's 6 regulations. So essentially they're still in effect, but you're going to revoke the regulations in the Department of Commerce section and just move them over into the Wildlife and Parks section of law. There are a few minor technical changes associated with the regs because they were first issued in 2005. So after an 8-year period, the revisor's office or the Department of Administration, the AG's office had comments on it. But essentially, they're virtually the same regulations. So at the next meeting, you'll just revoke the 6 and then enact the 6 new ones. And that's it. I'll stand for questions.
Everybody understand that?
Yes, sure.
Good answer. Any comments from the public? Okay.
Thank you.
Let's see. Lloyd, do you want to do this, and then after your section, we'll take a break before coyotes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. This is item C in the workshop session, item 3, 115.25.9A, and it's the regulation dealing with deer seasons at Fort Riley and also additional items that come up after we complete the regular deer season regulation. This year we had one item that came back after we approved 25.9, and that was the issue to continue monitoring crossbow hunter use and activities. So we've added that. Otherwise, the information in your briefing book is the same as the discussion section that we had in the previous commission meeting. I can go over those, or we can pass through. The item on crossbows, we have added to the regulation a section that will basically say crossbow users will be required to obtain a free ID number before they may use a crossbow to hunt deer. And that includes everybody. When we had it last year, it was only people of a certain age and certain units. This year it will be everyone using a crossbow. And the ID will be provided by the department. People can obtain that the same as they did last year. Would you like me to go through the season dates for Fort Riley?
Well, probably not myself, because we kind of let Fort Riley make their recommendations based on what their needs are.
That's correct.
On the crossbow ID, the question I have is, does free mean $2?
No, this is a free. This is free is free. This is a different system.
I didn't think Kohl's gave you anything free.
We're not doing it through Kohl's.
Oh, okay.
That's the reason we can do that. It doesn't have the. Technically, it's not as easy to do, and we're asking our IT department to design this system for us. But it is free to the users.
So you just get online, record, and register, and then you print out something rather than
they get a
that you
number.
can read, rather than a little green thing you can't read.
That's correct.
When you purchase your deer tags, can you get one then?
You could get this at any of our offices if you wish to obtain it there, or you could obtain it by yourself. You could go online and get it online individually.
But when you get your deer tags at Walmart, you can't get this number.
I would imagine they would have difficulty doing it. Our offices would have no difficulty. We could connect up with that section.
I would suspect that at Walmart they would have difficulty doing it, but they would not have difficulty pointing out the commissioner's phone numbers in the little booklet, so that customers who are befuddled at Walmart will call us for clarity.
That's right.
It's one more hoop to jump through to hunt deer.
Lloyd, I have a question. You're going to facilitate a postseason survey. Will we be made aware of the results of that survey at some point?
Sure. This is the same, and we did this survey last year with the crossbow users and had that information prior to our setting of the 25-9. Once again, we hope to have that information available to you next year when we do set regulation 25-9.
Thank you.
Now, this was one of the things that we wanted to do. I don't like to have any additional permits, but one of the concerns was whether or not the use of crossbows would affect harvest through the archery season and whatnot, and I don't know how else we can do that unless we identify potential crossbow users.
Lloyd, do you feel like we're getting down to where deer season's going to require an owner's manual at some point? I mean, truthfully, do you think we're trying to sometimes, not you, but do you think as a department we're trying to complicate it? It seems complicated to me, and I listen to it.
We've gone through a number of efforts through the years to simplify the regulations. Mm-hmm. And my experience has been we do our best to try to simplify it, and then pressure comes on from individuals that feel they are losing certain aspects that they have enjoyed before to put those special procedures back into place. And it's very difficult to hone that back in. Right now, we have 30 different classes of permits that the agency sells through Kohl's that are deer permits. And therein is one of the major factors, and that's due to residents, non-residents, landowners, youth, all of these times that we try to create something special for people with disability, people with that are youth or by equipment. They complicate our system. On the other hand, they are items that are highly desired by the people who like deer hunting and like their fashion of deer hunting for their condition.
And I certainly didn't mean that to deprive anyone. It just seems like we're starting to really do this. And I've had 3 or 4 phone calls in the last week, and I was not even aware of this, that I guess we're going to have a special gun doe season about the middle of November, right?
October.
In October,
I'm sorry.
We have a 2-day pre-rut whitetail antlerless season, 2-day.
Bear in mind, Don, that season, though, was not one that we initiated. It was one that was just crammed down our throat.
Thrust upon us.
And that's where I guess I'm going a little bit, is it's hard for us as a commission, it's hard for you as the king of the deer lords here to really manage this deer herd the way it should be managed when we're getting so much influence from people who don't have the expertise to manage the deer.
I agree, although our owner's manual is smaller than other states.
Exactly.
So I think we do have to have an owner's manual to hunt deer. And this is another free permit that I wish we didn't have to have, but we passed crossbows through this group over the objection and ultimately with kind of a respectful objection with a group that said we at least monitor and see whether this creates the detrimental effects that we feel it will. And I think we'll probably be able to do this for a few years and then won't find it necessary. But I think we sort of promised we'd do this to the bow hunters who objected to crossbows, and I don't see how we can not go ahead and complete it.
Oh, no, I agree with that, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say something to Dr. Fox. I am a doe hunter, and I proudly got 2 of my does this year, and I did not have any problems. The worst problem I had was dragging the doe from where I dropped her to the car, so I am a happy hunter, but I hunt does. I'm not looking for something with big antlers or anything like that. So some people really are happy with the way it is. And whatever you do to it, it's easy for me.
Any comments from the public? I'm glad free is free, Lloyd. Most of the time, we have to say revenue neutral, which means we pay Coles $2 and we don't get none. Any other comments from the commission? All right, let's take about a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back with the fur harvester regulations. It's been reported that number one, us commissioners need to talk closer, and then this particular mic doesn't seem to be. We want to make sure that it's where people can hear as well.
It's pointing up. It needs to point down.
Yeah, you can just do it that far.
There we go.
All right. Okay. Let's start with fur harvester regulations. Matt?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. So in the briefing book, you'll find the 12 changes that we have recommended for the fur bearer regulations. I provided some background information on each of these regulations at the last commission meeting. Since that time, I've received comments on or had correspondence on 3 of these items. So today, I'm just going to sort of discuss these 3 items, and if there are questions about any of the others, I'd be glad to answer them after later as well. But the first one is in KAR 115-5-1, the second item down. 2 years ago, we specified that all foothold traps had to be smooth-jawed. Since then, some trappers have complained about the inability to use tooth traps or studded jaw traps in water sets. And the primary argument for the change we were recommending is that smaller traps can be used on beavers if the jaws are not smooth. So the advantage of this is it's a lot easier for some trappers, especially some of the older trappers, to set and handle those traps than it is some of the newer beaver traps that are very large and powerful and difficult to set. So, however, the comments I've received on this item have been from trappers, and they have been in opposition to our recommended change on the basis that the negative public perception of allowing these tooth traps is not worth the benefits obtained by allowing them. So the recommendation came at the request of trappers, but I wanted to note that the support for this change is certainly not, is limited amongst trappers, or isn't unanimous at least. So the second item I want to discuss, also in KAR 115-5-1, is the coyote hunting issue. The department recommendation is to prohibit the use of vehicles and two-way radios for coyote hunting during the primary 12-day firearm deer season. This recommendation originated after last deer season, when Department Natural Resource officers expressed unified frustration over the inability to adequately enforce existing deer hunting regulations because of loopholes in regulations created by legal coyote hunting practices. This is an issue that's sort of been simmering for several years, with landowners and deer hunters having come to previous commission meetings asking the department to do something about these illegal activities, particularly involving road hunting and trespassing. We've also received complaints directed specifically at coyote hound hunters reportedly trespassing and shooting out draws with deer hunters present. These complaints prompted the commission to invite Kevin Jones, Director of Law Enforcement, to give a presentation on the history of coyote hunting in Kansas at a commission meeting a couple of years ago. And one notable component of that presentation was that coyote season, the entire coyote season, was closed completely during firearms deer season from 1978 to 1985, and it was closed during the first 2 days of deer season in 1986 and 87. And again, that would have been for all coyote hunting. So in response to the recent issues and comments we've received, a department work group was formed to consider possible solutions to the problems. Several options were considered, including reclosing the coyote season, or a closure of the coyote season during the primary deer season. However, most of the problems that were identified included the use of vehicles and two-way radios, and by prohibiting only their use rather than all coyote hunting, far fewer law-abiding coyote hunters would be affected. We recognize that hound hunters are the primary user group that would be affected by this recommendation. However, we are talking about 12 days out of what is effectively a 4 to 5 month long period when the weather is suitable for running coyotes with hounds. These 12 days are also obviously the time when the potential for user conflict is highest between deer hunters and coyote hunters. And then last, coyote hunters themselves are responsible for some of the problems or the complaints that we've received. That said, I think the origin of this recommendation does have more to do with deer hunting activities than coyote hunting, and this change will eliminate the ability of all hunters to drive draws, shoot from vehicles, road hunt, or use radios while deer hunting, with coyote hunting as an excuse. It will eliminate the excuse of coyote hunting for any of those activities. And it's worth mentioning that we don't have any intent, the working group did not discuss any further closure or restriction of the coyote season right now. We're talking about these 12 days only. We have no plans for additional restrictions on coyote hunters at this time. The third item I want to discuss, back to the fur bear regulations, is the very last one listed, the otter season changes being considered. So our proposal is to eliminate the 100 otter season quota. In eliminating that quota, we no longer have a need then to have trappers contact the department within 24 hours of harvest. We don't have to keep a precisely up-to-date harvest count. We're also proposing that they don't need to turn in carcasses any longer. All we need are lower canine teeth for aging. And since we don't need a fresh carcass, we can also do away with the 4-day time period in which they have to get the otter tagged and turn the carcass in. And we can make them the same as bobcat and swift fox, that they can be tagged within 7 days of the close of the season, at which time they can turn in the lower canine teeth. And then we also wish to maintain the 2 otter bag limit. This is the primary part of the regulation that's going to limit the harvest and control the harvest to a level that we consider to be acceptable. At the last commission meeting, there was a comment sort of questioning the statewide harvest on a species that's with a limited range in Kansas. And it is true that most of the otter harvest occurs in the easternmost 2 tiers of counties, but the otters that are harvested west of there are primarily harvested incidental to beaver trapping. So whether or not otter season is open does not impact the harvest of these animals. It only affects whether or not the people, the trappers themselves, are able to keep these otters. We wish for them to be able to, and it may also impact our ability to get accurate harvest information. I think I alluded to this last time, but if you're in the border county and you have to give the otter up if you caught it outside the open area, or you get to keep it if you caught it in the open area, most people are going to want to keep that otter. So with that, I will turn this back over to the commission, to you, Mr. Chairman, and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I know we have some public comment. Is there any comment at this time from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
Matt, on the language that's in your bullet point here, I'm trying to get my arms around this. Department NROs expressed unified frustration over inability to enforce existing deer regs because of loopholes by legal coyote hunting. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. If somebody's out there driving in their pickup truck along a draw and the game warden catches them do it, they might be wearing blaze orange, have their deer rifle. He catches them doing it and confronts them. They can say that they're coyote hunting, and that's legal for coyote hunting. If they're driving along the road somewhere where they have access and they have the window hanging out or the truck hanging out the window and take a shot onto a property, he can pull up there, and again, they could have their deer hunting blaze orange and stuff on. He can pull up there and check them, and they say, oh, well, I just shot at a coyote. So those are Kevin could expand on this, but these are the types of issues that they're running into. Another issue would be, this is a little more confusing, I guess, but you could have a group of coyote hunters with or without hounds driving a draw, with or without blaze orange and even deer rifles. You could have a group of deer hunters at the end of the draw. Both parties could be legally pursuing different species, but it certainly is not consistent with the intent of existing deer hunting law regulations. That's a few of the examples, I guess. Another example specifically to do with the radios that some of the conservation officers mentioned is people would be talking and they would have code names for a buck deer. So they're not saying a buck deer is coming your way, but I don't know, you know, have a code name for it. You got such and such headed your way or whatever. And if they get checked with radios, they can say that they're coyote hunting.
How prevalent is this problem? I mean, how many occurrences, events? I mean, is it in the thousands, the hundreds?
I'd have to ask Kevin about that.
I'm just curious about the magnitude of the problem.
I don't have a specific number because we didn't record individual instances, but I can tell you that by far and away, the majority of the officers in their weekly summaries would talk about situations running into individuals who, when checked in the field, from all outward appearances, are hunting deer with the equipment that they have, their attire, things of that nature, and be asked, are you hunting deer? Not right now, I'm hunting coyote. I might hunt deer later today. But they're driving through the draws. We get calls in from hunters who are in stands in areas where they are legally hunting, and people come driving through, shooting. Officer checks the people doing the shooting, trying to scare game out of draws. Well, we're trying to chase coyotes out or flush coyotes out. We have individuals who are claiming that they are coyote hunting when in fact they are driving vehicles through the draws, pushing deer to hunters at the other end of the draw, or things like that. And we sat and thought about this a long time. I've dealt with these issues with my officers for quite a number of years, and it became apparent this year that it had come to a point where we needed to bring this forward to see if something could be done through the regulation process, and we felt that at least by eliminating the hunting from a vehicle and the use of the two-way radios, we would not be affecting those people who wanted to incidentally take a coyote in a legal fashion while they were hunting, or if they were calling coyotes during that time period, to allow them. We're trying to restrict those two areas that are causing the greatest problems.
So an individual that wanted to call a coyote could still do so?
Absolutely.
There would be no restriction on that?
There wouldn't be any restriction on trapping. There wouldn't be any restriction on calling coyotes. Like I say, if an individual incidentally saw a coyote and shot it, as long as they weren't hunting from a motor vehicle or using a two-way radio during those 12 days.
Probably the number one unintended consequence is that and I understand it, the legitimate dog hunter is the person whose legal activity is restricted because people use the guise of coyote hunting as a way to sort of push the envelope on a lot of other hunting practices. I've sat here and I've heard complaint after complaint. None of them really talked about legitimate coyote hunters causing trouble. It was always people who were pretending to hunt coyotes and using that as sort of a ruse. But be that as it may, is there any other questions?
Well, I have a comment about not having it documented. I think I would have been a better advocate for any change because a lot of the times people ask me, what do you have documented as far as poaching during this time? And if I say nothing, it doesn't make me feel very strongly in what I'm saying.
In response to that, I didn't do a statistical count, but I can go back and I can note how many officers in their weekly updates stated that they saw that problem during that 12-day period. They did make note of it, and that's what caused me to come by. I don't have the statistics.
Sure,
here.
okay. I'd like to see them compiled just so I had, I was stronger in that.
Kevin, I'm going to probably start with you, and I'm going to try to make this pretty elementary for me. because it's a pretty complex issue, I guess. Were you around in 78 through 85 when the season was closed by the department?
I was working in the state of Wyoming at that time.
Okay. Who was in charge of deer? Lloyd, were you in charge of deer? Is Lloyd still here? Were you in charge of deer? Who was in charge of deer? Keith, your shot. During that time, you probably remember it then. Why did it happen then? Why did we close coyote season from 78 to 85? Or 87, really, I guess.
Well, I think it came about just sort of on this same sort of scenario where you had enough of interest and issues that were on the landscape out there that we had requests for the closure of the coyote season. And of course, at that time, we pretty much closed it altogether. And then, of course, some of the backlash was from the ag community in terms of their ability to take a coyote if the opportunity presented itself. And after that time, then we pretty much have just, sort of backed away from the coyote issue and deer hunting and deer season. But most of the time, these kind of things come in a similar manner here, where you just begin to see enough of that conflict and abuse of one activity to sort of mask another that the commission at that time decided to take some action.
Did you feel like during that 9 or 10 year time frame that deer road hunting reduced?
Well, yeah, that's a hard one. That goes back a while. I'm not sure about that particular issue in terms of use of the coyote hunting as an excuse type thing. That certainly was reduced. When you say deer road hunting, in terms of just the use of vehicles for taking deer, that continues to be an issue. But I can't. Don, really, I can't remember back that far that because we finally backed away from it.
And why did we back away from it? Because of the pressure from the
well, there was
side?
pressure, yeah, from the general public and the ag community particularly, because we pretty much had it shut down for
the entire instead of just
during
for
the deer
12
season.
Days, or no, it was just during deer
during
season.
the firearm deer season.
Okay.
But we're not proposing closing it.
No. And Kevin, in your opinion today, then, do you feel like closing it for this 12 days would reduce road hunting deer instances?
I think that this provides the officers a tool to better enforce the deer regulations as it regards to the unlawful use of motor vehicles. I'm not saying it's going to eliminate it, but it certainly is going to reduce the ability of an individual to come up with a quasi-alibi as to why their activity is what it is, why they're driving down through fields and pushing deer and things like that with motor vehicles.
How long is the current coyote season now?
Year-round?
365 days a year. How long can feasibly, if we take now the group of just hound hunters, how many months a year can hound hunters hunt?
4 to 5.
4 to 5. Okay, call it 5 months. So we're talking about 12 days and 5 months. And we've all, as commissioners, I'm assuming we all got the same phone calls from both sides. And it's a difficult issue. And I think, Keith, your response is probably, from my perspective, going to influence my recommendation on some kind of result for this. Is we don't have a lot of data, and we don't have any data, I guess, from when we entirely closed this season from 78 to 87 for that period of time. If we were to make this kind of move, and Kevin, tell me if this would be too much of a burden, I guess, because, and the reason that I think I value your opinion, not more or less than anyone else's, but because of the law enforcement side, there's so few law enforcement to enforce so many regulations that you have to simplify it the best way you can. That's why I think this commission especially is trying to move towards that in a lot of different ways. If we were to put a time limit of something on this, say we're gonna adopt this regulation with a sunset on it, and whether it's this commission or another commission that has to address this, we keep track of the violations. We keep track of the counties the violations are in. We keep track of are there real problem areas, and what really is the impact? Because I think the impact here is a singular issue, and that singular issue is the poaching of deer from the road. And trespass being secondary probably, or maybe hand in hand. But do you think that would be something that would be too burdensome for you guys to monitor?
Well, we could attempt to the best of our ability to keep track of that data.
Yeah. Well, I know you can do it, but do you think would it be too complicated to keep track of, okay, we had 7 guys in Chase County that we give violations to because they were in violation of this particular regulation?
No, we could do that. We could do that.
Because I think then, and I'm not saying we are or not, I'm just looking for a middle ground here to where if it's impactful, maybe it's something we continue. If it's not impactful, there's no use putting the burden on forever on something like this. There's not very many species of wildlife that we can hunt 365 days a year in the state of Kansas. I don't feel like that it's a big burden to take 12 days out. With that being said, the next question is going to be, are we going to then be asked to close it for the entire season? Or are we then going to be asked to close it for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days at some time in the future? And I understand that point from the legitimate hound hunters. So I'm looking for a little middle ground on this thing, to not put too much burden on the department, to make common sense to the guys in public lands, the guy, Matt and everybody else in the department, as well as the hunters.
I'd like to, at this point, I'm interested in hearing some public comment.
If I may add one thing, just in comment to you, Commissioner Badger. The interesting thing is that the only time that this has come up as an issue from our officers, it's never been during the archery season. It's never been after the regular firearm season. The preponderance and prevalence of this occurs during that 12-day regular firearm season. Right. And I've got reports from my officers that the weekend following the close, nobody's wearing orange, nobody's talking anything about deer hunting. Everything's back to normal.
And I don't think any of us in the audience or on the commission level are naive enough to doubt the statement you just made. And that's why I say, if there were a way to monitor something like that for some period of time, but I'm like Gerald, I'd like to hear from the public.
Of course, the problem, Don, is that if you take away that loophole, then you're not going to have, you won't have any data, because nobody will be able to use that as a ruse. So anyway, you've been very patient. Come up, please, and state your name and stand close to the microphone so everyone can hear you.
My name's Doug Modis. I want to thank you for your time to hear me out. I am a coyote hunter with dogs. I hunt in Wellsville, Kansas area. Been doing it all my life. And first of all, I want to state, if this is taken away, poachers are just going to find other ways. What about the bird hunters, the trappers, the callers? They all have the right to hunt their game during the rifle deer season. They are capable of poaching a deer if they so choose, and then claim to be hunting another species. My point is, this proposal isn't right to single us coyote hunters out. Unfortunately, an outlaw will always be an outlaw, and nothing's going to stop them. They will just come up with another excuse. Mr. Jones, you said that one of the ways we can hunt during this time is to call them, correct? Well, I mean, how does that work for a coyote hunter like myself? I hunt with dogs. How do you suggest, or any of the commissioners, how would you suggest that how would I hunt during that time?
The issue is not towards the use of dogs per se. It is by hunting by the use of a motor vehicle. Sure. And that is the difference in that. The issue that we're bringing up here is that in other species, the use of a motor vehicle is illegal to hunt any game animal or fur-bearing animal in the state. The only exception is with coyotes. Okay. And that is where we have the issue. Is the coyote a predator? Well, generally, yes, coyote's a predatory animal, just as a bobcat is a predatory animal. That's true. Go ahead,
then. So back to this. Yes, this is 12 days. We feed dogs. Myself, I have 7 dogs that I feed. We feed dogs 365 days a year, and that's important to us. You suggesting for us to go out and call them, that's like telling a bow hunter to go out and rifle hunt. There's 2 different breeds of deer hunters. There's different coyote hunters. Additionally, it's been stated, and I've talked to you commissioners, I've contacted each and every one of you, it's been brought up multiple times to me, that we can hunt 365 days a year, and that is simply not the case. Yeah, the law might state we can hunt 365 days, but if I hunted 365 days, I'd have every landowner in the country mad at me. I'd have every one of my dogs dead because we can't run them in the summer. We're not going to run them through a farmer's field that's been planted. We hunt from the first part of November to typically the first part of February, weather pending. We're not going to go out there and drive on a farmer's wet ground. And every fall I go out and I get my permission so I can hunt. And when I get that permission from the landowners, they have the right to tell me, I don't want you hunting during deer season, and I get that. But if they give me the permission to hunt, I have just as much right as a deer hunter. And with that said, when we're out hunting during this deer season, it is obviously common for us to come upon a deer hunter who's already on the property we want to hunt. When we come upon that, we don't hunt it. We'll bypass it out of respect to a fellow hunter. We're not out there, Mr. Peak here said there's user conflict. I don't have user conflict. The group I hunt with, we do not have user conflict. We go out there, we see that hunter, and we bypass it. It's as simple as that. The landowner, if they don't want me hunting during that time, I will not hunt during that time. Additionally, like I said, what I don't think maybe a lot of you commissioners understand, and I completely understand, but us coyote hunters spend thousands and thousands of dollars to do this each and every year. I'd be willing to bet we spend more money per person, per hunter, than any hunter in the state of Kansas. And I actually brought some figures that speak for myself, not for each and every one, but myself, that I'd like to hand out to you.
Don't let my wife see anything like this.
So what you're seeing here is my yearly cost. Now there's going to be some years I spend more than this. There's going to be years I spend less. The point is, we're spending more than our $20 hunt license each and every year. I got to feed dogs all year long. I have my hunting truck. I have our vet bills, our feed bills, our gas. You think about what that means to our local economy, our local businesses. And let's say you take that away, and kind of circling back is, yeah, this is 12 days we're talking about, but what's next? If this is taken away from us, what's next? Are you going to take it all for archery season, the extended deer season? You take this away from us, we're going to, for more than 12 days, we're going to quit. It's not going to make any sense for us to do this. And look at these numbers, what the state of Kansas is going to be losing. And this doesn't even include what I pay for a dog to hunt, because that's a bearing on one person, not a business.
How many dogs do you run?
Typically we'll have This past year, I had 5 dogs. I'm going to have 7 to 8 this upcoming season that we hunt at a time.
And do you have 1 or 2 trucks in process on a hunt?
When I hunt, you can have one. There's guys here that don't hunt by themselves, but I typically will have 3 to 4 trucks that I hunt with. Now, I didn't just come to say, please don't take this away. I've come with some suggestions, and I've pointed these out to a lot of you in my calls and my emails, and I hope that you can take these in consideration. The first one is, during these 12 days, let's take the deer caliber rifle out of the truck. Or let's take all the guns out of the truck if you're coyote hunting from a vehicle. Mr. Budd, you had mentioned to me that on our call that you couldn't do that possibly because of the conceal and carry. It'd be hard to do that. Now, I've done my homework, and I know, for example, in the state of Minnesota, they have that same law in place. And they right now have it where you cannot coyote hunt from a vehicle with a rifle in your truck. That's their way around it. That's their workaround. So there's 1. 2, don't take it away from the guys hunting with dogs. The law enforcement officer should have the sense about them to know, hey, these guys got 8 dogs on their truck. They're not deer hunting. Why punish me for something I'm not doing wrong? And 3, let's take another option is take the hunter orange out of the vehicle if you're coyote hunting. I think this would eliminate it. If you want to put maybe a fluorescent orange vest on us coyote hunters to, be able to tell who's who, let's do that for these 12 days. But if you take the hunter orange out, that's going to eliminate me from legally being able to deer hunt. I'm out there coyote hunting. And again, if you want to add, like I said, fluorescent green or whatever it might be to just distinguish me as a hunter, we can do that as well. We're looking for ways to work together. We understand where you guys are coming from, Mr. Jones, but again, the coyote hunter is not really the problem here. It's the poachers, it's the deer hunters. And why do I have to have something taken away from me that I look forward to each and every year and spend a lot of money and time and effort and spend time with my dad and my friends for something that a deer poacher is doing? That's all I have. I mean, I'm very passionate about this. This is important to me, and I don't want this taken away from me due to outlaws who are going to just find other loopholes to go about their business. I mean, unfortunately, that's the truth. But again, I appreciate your time listening to me. I hope this doesn't go through, and I would love to talk to you guys even more if you have questions or, for me on how we hunt or how we do this. But please look at these figures. This is just for me. There's guys that spend a lot more money than I do. But again, thank you.
Doug, I got a question.
Okay.
I want a copy of that.
Go ahead.
Good. I'm really curious, how much coyote hunting do you do on public land?
0.
And is that fairly common? That not many.
Well, where I'm from, there's not a lot of public land, so I can't speak for the rest of the guys. But I'm in eastern Kansas. I don't hunt public land. It's all private that I have permission to hunt on.
I'm not sure hardly any dog hunters would hunt on public land because, number one, you can't drive your dogs around on any public land.
Are you specifying public land of what Wildlife and Parks has that says for pheasant hunters and stuff, or public land of what all ranchers and farmers are? What do you classify as
well,
public land?
owned not by private individuals, owned by the public. Don? Or
I'm done.
Okay.
Doug, first of all, I've known your dad for a long time. and I've, in my younger years, I hunted these coyotes with dogs up around Effingham, so I know exactly I know what you guys are talking about. I know you're here representing a few hundred people, probably.
It's more than a few hundred.
Yeah, a lot of people. Yeah.
And I'm not just defending the coyote hunters that hunt with greyhounds. I'm defending the guys who run trail hounds, the guys who hunt them with the trucks, their vehicles. I mean, there's a heck of a lot more of us than you guys even know.
Right. Well, and I understand all that. You got to understand that when we're sitting up here as a commission, we've got to look at it from a completely different perspective than if I was sitting out in the audience. So we've got an obvious problem here with not you, but with the outlaws that are using the excuse as being a coyote hunter. So we've got to deal with that somehow or another. We just have to. And I know typically it's a weekend deal. Is when
For me it is.
For you it is, and a lot of the other guys
have the winter
probably
off and they hunt every chance they get, and they spend a whole lot more money than I do.
Yeah, we've got to make it also as easy as we can on our law enforcement guys. We do, because they're getting every excuse in the book on why guys are doing this, and the problem is the deer poaching. It's just that simple, just that short and sweet.
Why should a coyote hunter like myself be punished? We're not even talking about coyotes here.
I guess just to get to my point here, is there a compromise with you guys, or is it just
I did suggest that. I did suggest. I have three ideas, and I think they're very valid points. And I am trying to compromise because I know you guys have your hands full.
Right. If there were some sort of a compromise that we could work out to where we don't put the compromises that you proposed are good in certain ways, but it puts too much of a burden on law enforcement.
But that's...
I mean, it just does. I mean, I'm sorry, but in my mind it does.
It puts too big of a burden taking the gun out of the truck. It takes too much of a burden to say, I mean, if we have a law saying wear your blaze orange, why can't we have a law saying if you're coyote hunting, don't wear it?
Let's go ahead, and I think we have probably more public comment. And I appreciate, and I don't mean to cut you off, but...
Thank you, Doug. I need to stand, Boots, and leave the air.
Stan, come on up here.
Come on.
I just got one question. I just had, to all of you, and I'm glad you're all here. You're great people. I just have one question is all I have, and I don't understand all the laws. I am a coyote hunter with greyhounds. I don't even own a high-powered rifle. And it's to the law enforcement people, and I know several of them, they're good people, but if there's a vehicle that's driving down this draw, and he's got orange on, and he has a high-powered rifle beside him, and he's got a buddy with him that has the same, and say they're driving down the draw, then you get to the gate and you stop them, okay? And what are you doing, okay? If they got orange on, and they got a high-powered rifle with them, and there's no dogs in the back, people, they're not coyote hunting, they're deer hunting. But why can't you give them a ticket? Because they are deer hunting, they're not coyote hunting. And
that may be. I understand what you're saying. However, if you were to write that citation, I'm not sure under the circumstances you'd have that burden of proof that any county attorney would ever do anything with it. And that's where the problem is, because they're going to make a statement, and what kind of everything that Kevin's people write goes to the county attorneys in 105 counties, and they have to make those decisions, and there has to be more evidence than logical conclusions.
But, well, I understand that, and I know our county attorney in Anderson County. I've never been in front of him, but I do know who he is, see with the restaurant and stuff. But it seemed like to me that you should be able to give him a ticket, because 90% of the ones that's out there road hunting are city people that come on weekends and stuff, and they don't have a clue who they are. We all have a clue who we're on. We all do. I mean, I do, and I'll guarantee you all of them out there do. They know who they're on. I've hunted since 1970, ever since I graduated out of high school. I am 61 years old. And as far as that list there, I hunt every day, almost every day. And I got 14 dogs. I got 2 little 6-year-old grandchildren that love to go. They got their own dogs. They like it. And I don't beat it in their head to go, but they do like to go. But I don't have those figures in front of me, but I spend many, many, many times to that. I spent $1,300 in one whack, had a dog break his leg to a local veterinary. That's just one deal. And I've had the first 4 races this year, I killed 3 good dogs. They hit ditches and killed themselves. So you got to buy them or raise them. But what my question was, is why can't you give them a ticket? Because they have their orange on, they have their high-powered rifle beside them. Fellas and ladies and gentlemen, we do not carry a high-powered rifle when I go coyote. I don't even own a high-powered rifle. And I can name you several of these guys here that don't have a high-powered rifle. We carry a .22 pistol. We shoot at the ground to scare the coyote out, because if he doesn't move and get out of the brush, our dogs can't see him. And that's all I have, and I appreciate it. But why can't you give them a ticket? I mean, I'm not being rude.
Kevin, go ahead if you want
anything.
That is going to be based on the legal requirements in order for an individual to give a ticket or an arrest. That standard is probable cause, not reasonable suspicion that, okay, this is it. I got to have proof, probable cause to make the arrest that a crime is being committed, and I can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah. Okay.
And so if the individual can come in and give a credible reason as to why they are doing it, it depends upon the judge or the jury as to whether they want to believe that side or not. But
Okay.
it's going to be up to the county attorney to see in the details of that case whether there is sufficient probable cause and whether he feels that there is proof beyond a reasonable doubt to prosecute it further. And so far, we have not been able to achieve that.
Okay, you grab this gentleman or gentlemen's or ladies or whoever they are by the ear, and you tell them, you ask them this, say, hey, take me to the landowner. Just say you own the place, or whoever owns it. If you grab him by the ear or say, hey, let's go see the landowner, because I know that you have a map with you. We all get them. Anderson County serves out a map where I own ground, and say, where if you live in Anderson County, you own ground. Take me to this landowner and say, hey, do you know this gentleman? Before this other guy could even speak, do you know him? And if this landowner says no, he gets a trespassing ticket. Because I'll guarantee you 99% of them that come and hunt my country, where I hunt, where I have permission, they come out of Garnett, Iola, Kincaid, Colony, Welda, and all the surrounding towns, driving up and down the roads, throwing their beer cans out, throwing their pop cans out, and their McDonald's sacks that you have to pick up. And they don't have permission. They see a nice buck out there standing along the side of the road a block away, boom. I average probably 2, when Aaron Sheeby was our game warden, which I know him very well. I worked with him diligently to try to find poachers. I found a lot of deer with their heads cut off, a lot of deer. But if you take this guy to the local landowner, I would bet good money that he's not supposed to be out there.
And that may be, but it's a little more complicated from a law enforcement standpoint.
But can't you ask him to do that? Do you ask him? I know Aaron moved out of our Anderson County and moved over around Madison somewhere, and I've talked to him on the phone, but can't you ask him who they're on?
Chris, from the regulation that we've got in place, if we were to write, if Kevin was to write, or one of his guys were to write a violation based on what we have today for exactly what this gentleman said, would it be enforceable through a court of law?
There's several issues that we've talked about here. First off, it's not inherently unlawful just to drive around in your pickup truck with a rifle and being in blaze orange. I mean, that's just not against the law. So if somebody wants to do it, they can do it. Doesn't matter what time of the year. But there's also this little thing, civil rights and the Bill of Rights in the Constitution of the state of Kansas and of the United States, which protects you from unlawful search and seizure. You can't just grab people by the ear and haul them off to the local landowner.
If he's on this gentleman's ground right here, and if you ask this hunter that he's driving on this gentleman or all of them, and you ask him whose land you are, and he can't tell you, or if you take him to this landowner and the landowner don't know him, he gets a ticket, and that's what's not happening.
We certainly have the ability to ask somebody and have them consent by answering, but that doesn't mean they have to answer, and that doesn't mean that you can haul them to jail.
Well, but you can take them to the landowner.
You can't detain people.
I'm not sure
This is
you
a
actually
complex
can.
issue about people's
Or can't you go
constitutional
to the landowner and
rights.
ask if they have permission?
Don't they have to have written permission if it's posted purple?
If it's
But
got
if it's not
orange
posted
paint-
purple.
If it's had orange paint on a post, you got to have written permission to be on there.
Purple
But
paint.
if you catch somebody that's deer hunting driving down this draw, and you find, just say I own it, and he catches some people driving down their slough or whatever, and all he's got to do is come to Mr. Booth and say, hey, does such and such have permission to drive on you? And I would say no, they either yes or no. I think that would be, there's a fine line here, but that is how one way you can get rid of all these people that's driving down the roads and then down the land, especially on the land. We got, there's all kinds of good apples and bad apples and oranges and everything. But sir, we're good people. And lady, young man, we're good people. But there's bad in every group, no matter what it is.
Well,
and
I understand we need to move on.
If you go to the landowner and they don't have permission, give them a ticket. I don't care. It'd be nice if you give it to them for $10,000, but that would never stick.
No, it would never stick. But your point is well taken. It's. I don't think that our focus is on the guy that hunts with hounds or sight dogs.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's very difficult. You know, everybody wants to complain about the game warden, and if the game warden starts having everything thrown out of court because he's made these writes these weak tickets, it just makes it worse. I see what you're saying, but I think it's a little more complicated than that. But I'd like to have. I respect your opinion, but I've got more people who want to talk.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kerwin Nichols from Carbondale. I appreciate all of your time, and I know this is an issue. I know it's an issue for the Fish and Game. There again, I also did a proposal to some of the members on, what things we could do. But I think even if you take it away from the 12 days, from the coyote hunters, the ones that are going to do this, and it don't matter what it is, okay, you give the guy potential, hey, you can go out and shoot a coyote. Well, where's he going? He's going to be in his vehicle. He's driving through that guy's place. He's going to shoot. If he's got orange in there, he's going to step out and shoot a nice buck if he sees one. So I don't think it's going to really matter what you're doing. I think the person will use any excuse. Hey, I'm driving over there to get out to go bird hunting. So there's going to be the coyote hunters just happen to be the first one out. To make it easy, I live around there, around Carbondale all my life, and I'm sure there's poachers. I'm sure they're everywhere. You might see them early through that first 12 days, but I'm sure they're poaching before the deer season's open. They're poaching after the deer season open. They still see a nice one out there. They're going to shoot it. Like Doug said, we spend a lot of money, gas, dogs, and for out there, and to have it closed down those 12 days it's just like a chokehold on you. But is there any questions?
Any question at this point? We may, Jeremy. Yeah.
Do you have a recommendation?
I believe maybe take wear the green. If the deer hunters are wearing orange, let the coyote hunters wear green. Take out the high powers and in there, because everybody else is still going to be hunting. And I know that it's easy to say, well, you can still go hunt, but yet they can still go out there. Say they're going to go out there and call a coyote. They're going to be in maybe a pickup or even jump on an ATV driving out there, and they got their buddies down at the other end of that draw. and they just go up on top of the hill. You know, they just pushed it out the same thing other than a coyote hunter, done the same thing. So.
All right, we got, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Sir?
I'm Mike Bohannon from Sumner County down here in South Haven. I had a whole big spiel, but out of all this, listening to it, it sounds to me there's a real easy solution. In those 12 days, don't shoot a coyote. It's illegal. Deer hunters shoot our coyotes all the time when they're out deer hunting. Deer hunters coming down there, can we follow you so we can shoot a deer? We try not to even get them around us, but they'll set back a half mile and they'll wait. If we run that deer out, then you see the cloud of dust go, they go after them. And I sympathize with game wardens because they get put in a position, it's a no-win situation. They cannot win on catching these guys as long as there's any kind of coyote season going on. So it's either quit all the coyote hunting completely, no shooting of coyotes at all, no running of dogs, or do the simple. You can't shoot a coyote. Where's their excuse? They have no more excuses. They're out there driving. We're coyote hunting. Well, you can't coyote hunt during this time. You cannot shoot a coyote legally. Guys with dogs, we don't shoot the coyotes.
Playing devil's advocate, what do you think the Kansas Livestock Association or Kansas Farm Bureau would say if you brought that up? No shooting coyotes during 12 days in December.
Livestock Association, I probably would say they'd agree with it because they don't want you out there shooting them anyway. Most of them, if they have cattle or sheep out there in those fields, they don't want you out there shooting coyotes out there anyhow.
Okay.
You know, that's all I can come up with. All the rest of the stuff's already been said.
Well, thank you for your time. Yes.
Tim Donges. I agree 100% with Officer Jones over here and his statements he made. I've seen a lot of this firsthand with the illegal hunting of coyotes. I'm not saying these guys are illegal hunters, and I appreciate them being houndsmen and appreciate them trying to do it ethically. One of the things, the question for one thing is when we allow shooting of a rifle out of a pickup on the guys that are illegally hunting the coyotes, whether they're going across the field at 40 mile an hour or 50 mile an hour, that aren't using the hounds or leaving the hounds in the back of the truck, do we consider that fair chase? And I'm concerned about whether that is considered fair chase or not. Are we teaching the young kids that are riding into pickups along with them, are we teaching them to hunt from a pickup with a rifle? The guys here they're talking are hunting mainly with hounds. It sounds like they're letting them out, and they're not shooting from the pickups. But the things that Officer Jones brought up, we've got guys that are actually going out and marking the fences, the illegal coyote hunters that are doing it for the deer purpose. They're actually marking or flagging fences so the standers or the guys in the pickups along the roads know where the deer are going to come up out. The other thing, of course, we're having problems with is landowners that have their calves and stuff in the pasture. These guys are going 40, 50 mile an hour across the pasture chasing a coyote when we got calves laying in the grass. I actually have a kid I mentored that's mentored over years. He actually was killed this year with driving a Razor. It was fully equipped with reinforced bars, 5-point harnesses, and they're using AR-15 or AR rifles. And as they're going across these fields chasing the coyotes, they're shooting. And have another person that in another county has admitted that, you know, I used to do this as a kid where I have a dirt bike and I use a pistol as they're going across. I'm driving, going across the field, I'm shooting them with a pistol. I'm not saying these guys are doing that, but we are seeing a lot of this activity, and it's creating pressure for the guys that are doing things legitimately out there. Landowners are increasingly saying, no, I'm not allowing hunting, and not just for the coyote hunters, but for everybody. And so we're concerned about, you know, having access to hunting properties for everybody, not just the coyote hunters. So that was the main points I wanted to hit on. The other thing is, you know, we always got to keep in mind, what's the general non-hunting public think about what we're doing if we're shooting out of pickups? You know, what's their thoughts on it? So.
I think the shooting out of pickups, and Keith, I think that was more of a predator control perspective rather than have anything to do with fair chase.
Do you represent the Deer Association? Are you representing Deer Association?
Will you speak up?
Sir, the gentleman, is he represent, are you here?
I'm representing myself and my neighbors. And my neighbors, you know, a lot of them are cattle producers. I also own land myself. I'm not just a hunter, I'm also a landowner. They've seen enough of this in my particular area that they're tired of it. So, and these guys allow, you know, the calling, the trapping, and that type of stuff, but over time, over years, it's wearing them down, and they're shutting it down, and they're just absolutely saying, we're not going to allow any hunting in the future, period, because we're just tired of all the problems.
Tim,
So,
with what's proposed here, what you've heard from the hound hunters, we've narrowed this down to a pretty small window. And you're not here on behalf of Quality Deer?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So I don't know, I guess if this is a fair question, because generally you are.
Yeah, well, I'm not here for division amongst hunters. Right. You know, we don't want that.
No, I'm just
So
saying,
not
is there a
interested in that.
compromise from your opinion to their opinion to find a middle ground here, or is it you've got your opinion, they've got their opinion, and we're going to have to
Well, actually,
make a choice?
both sides, they had some good points that they brought up, and
I'd like a
department has.
20-word answer. Do you have a solution?
Okay. I like the idea of closing it for the 2-week period, but I also like their idea of no rifles in the pickups.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
So,
Where is your area?
over in Butler Chase, Butler Chase, Marion County area.
Yeah, I just like to know who's causing the trouble.
You know, and one of the
I never heard of anybody running over a cow or a calf or anything like that. It's getting little.
okay, and I, sir.
Good afternoon. I'm Sig Collins, and I live over in the Partridge Pretty Prairie, southwest of Hutch area. Live on the Nenasko River, so we have lots of deer hunters. We have lots of coyote hunters. The ranch there has been in the family since 1886, so been there a long time. I was here when they didn't hunt in what, 70, you stated it was year 76 to 78. It didn't kill any of us. But the problem we're seeing today and what's caused all this problem, and I don't want to get on the deer hunters because I have deer hunters myself, but we've got people that's leasing up land or they come out and buy 80 acres and think they control 640. I think a lot of these people that he's hearing from, that they can't write tickets, if it's a legitimate trespass, he can write the ticket. There ain't no doubt about that. But if it's a guy over next to him that owns a quarter over there, 80 acres, and he's mad because I drive down the road, and I've got a tag on my pickup, I can drive down that road. So you come into a situation where a lot of the problems are not enforceable because that guy can't sign a complaint because I'm not on his place. But he's the one that's calling the law enforcement. So it is a problem, and I'm not going to argue that. But I think it's different than it was back in 78 to 86, when we didn't have near the non-resident deer hunters that we've got today. And we've got outfitters that are leasing up everything, and they're just like that, you know. So if you're going to take something from the coyote hunters, think about taking something from the deer hunters. I don't know for sure what. I've had my own ideas, but
what are they?
One would be in our area is I would make them move them feeders so far from the next property owner. All he's doing is hunting my place. Because he doesn't have any deer on his, but he can put his feeder next to me, get them deer to come over on him, and the feeders from here to there from my place. And I know it's not enforceable. So I know it can't be done. I'm smart enough for that. But somewhere along, I think the biggest problem, and I don't hunt during those 12 days anyway. We hang them up. We don't open the dog pen. But I think the biggest problem is coming, and I may be wrong, but it's from the landowners and people that have leased up land that really don't control where I'm at. If I'm trespassing, he can write me a ticket.
Were you running those hounds, did you say, from 78 to 85? You
Well,
were?
I was running them before then.
Yeah. And how did it impact you? Because you're probably the guy in the room then that needs to give us the biggest impact that had.
To me, it didn't bother me. You know, we run a lot of cows. We put the we put the dogs in the truck about every day. Those days during deer season, then, and I don't load them up today.
Why is that? Why don't you run them during that time?
Just for the respect of the deer hunter. I've invested my money, he's invested his. My problem comes more with the guy that owns 80 acres or leases 80 acres and tries to control 3 miles around.
Are you a deer hunter too?
Yep. Now I have deer hunters come too. We have deer hunters come.
Okay.
You know, so I know where it is from both sides there.
Is there any more, and again, I'm trying to get as many people to have talk as they can.
Thank you.
Ron?
I'm Ron Klataski from Manhattan, and I'm just speaking on behalf of myself. I've hunted deer in Kansas for the last 41 years, and most years host other people who on our land who enjoy hunting deer. I fully support the department's proposal on this, and I think it's better than total closing like we had before, and I do think that if there's no further erosion for the coyote hunters' opportunities, hopefully it will not dramatically diminish their interest as well. I host not only deer hunters, but the last 2 years, dog hunters on part of our property. I have property in 3 counties, and I stopped a guy on the road. I saw his dogs, and I said, "Why don't you come over to my place, and we'll see if we can control a few coyotes," because of the fact that I think that an overabundance of coyotes has been detrimental to prairie chickens in our area. It's not the only thing, but it's one of many things. I question whether or not a game warden finding somebody on my land can write him a ticket for trespassing. I think I would have to file charges and stuff. So it's not as simple as it sounds, and so I completely go with the department. The only other comment I want to make, and I'm hoping it works out well on the otter seasons, but I sure would like to see them recover throughout the state wherever there's suitable habitat without having trapping prevent that from happening. Thank you.
Sir, did you have? Oh, no,
My name's Jim Childs. I live east of Arkansas City. I enjoy a luxury that a lot of these other hunters don't enjoy. I have the same passion this young man does. I've hunted and had my own dog since 1964. I was around when it was closed before. I'll tell you how it impacted me, and here's something that maybe the law enforcement needs to think about. Gene McCulley, which is our retired game ranger in our area for Cali County, stopped me. I went to Oklahoma because I don't live that far from the line. I buy an out-of-state license. I was bound and determined I'm going to hunt, and I'm still going to hunt. I possess an Oklahoma license now as well as a Kansas. A lot of these fellows can't do that, but I'm close. I went to Oklahoma, hunted one day, come home, and south of Silverdale, Kansas, Gene stops me. "What are you doing?" "Well, headed for home." "You been hunting?" "Yes, I have." "Where at?" "Oklahoma." He don't know I've got my dogs. I had a pistol in the truck. He knew that. Gene and I have worked together trying to catch poachers for a long time, but still, I get questioned. Now, there could be some guy from Wichita. He could be from Hays, Kansas, wherever. Go to Oklahoma. He's transporting these dogs back. What do we do about that? He's not supposed to be hunting, but here's the deal. I wouldn't do it. because I know the consequences, but a lot of guys, coyote crosses the road in front of them, they're gonna run him. They wasn't supposed to be hunting, but yet, here we are. You know, that hauling dogs down the road, you'll find guys say, well, I'm gonna go over here somewhere and buy a dog. They could use that for an excuse. You got a truck. I hunt by myself. I do have a radio because about 3 times a year, I hunt up around Latham, Kansas. So I'll hunt with a guy. But I hunt by myself. I've enjoyed hunting for years and years. This boy talking about spending $7,000. Well, I spend a lot more than that, but that's my choice. It's like a drug addiction. And coyote hunting is very addictive. I've done it all my life. My dad done it. And all these hunters that's up here, you know, come up here with this thought in mind. You know, like to protect what they've got going. I understand the Fish and Game standpoint. But if they can ever catch some of these guys so-called doing this, they need to find the daylights out of them rather than penalize all the rest of us. And that's what I feel like's happening. And I don't know, you know, if we have the doe season, rifle doe season, well, are we going to close the coyote hunting during that? You know, this is a beginning of a snowball effect. And I consider myself to be a sportsman. I hunt where I got permission. There are places that allow deer hunting. I steer clear of that. I don't need the confrontation. I don't want the problems. And I'm sure a lot of these other folks don't either. I understand your standpoint, but you know, this is just something to think about. The guys transporting these dogs back from Oklahoma or wherever, are you going to write him a ticket? That's, you know, that's some pretty shady ground there you're on. Yeah. So that's just my 2 cents worth.
Okay.
I'm another one of those that lives 4 miles from Oklahoma, and I go to Oklahoma and come back and forth too.
Matt, when do we vote on this? Not tonight, not today.
June.
June.
We also need to keep our dogs exercised too. You let them up 12 days, you're gonna have a problem.
Okay.
That's one thing we strive at, is you gotta get them in shape. But once you get them in shape, they're hard. And just say that they do close it for the 12 days, you've got, all he does is lay there and eat and drink, and he gets fat, and then we've gotta start all over again. The worst thing on a greyhound is trying to get him in shape, because he pulls a muscle in his shoulder, his neck, his back, his hip, he's done. He's done for a month. And that's the reason why you strive to get them in shape and keep them in shape if you can. So now, if this does go through, and they got to lay around for 12 days, we've got to start all over again. And there's more pulled muscles, there's more hurt shoulders, but we spend more money. We go to the vet and things like that. That's all I have to say. I thank you all.
Is there more? Yes, sir.
My name's Ed Guest. My name's Ed Guest, and I live down toward Wellington. And I would like for you to pass the law that there would be no guns in vehicles. We can still hunt. I run trail hounds and I hunt 7 days a week.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Hey, Keith, back in the day, we enacted this thing, or you guys did, and then it went away. Why did it, what happened there? What was the reason behind that?
Randy, frankly, I can't remember, but there was quite a lot of pressure from particularly from the ag community and being able to take.
So it was constituencies other than.
Yeah, it was more of a political / social issue than anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can answer a little more to that. Not everybody got a deer permit at that time as well, and one of the commissioners was a avid coyote caller, as I recall.
Anybody else have any, Bill?
I'm Bill Douglas. I'm from Yates Center, Kansas, born and raised in Woodson County. I guess I'm a recovering sight dog addict. I don't have dogs right now. I had dogs for more than 30 years, started hunting in 1968. And I took offense back when we couldn't hunt coyotes. But I had a game warden lived at the end of the 3-mile section I was in, and that was kind of an incentive. But I started hunting deer because I couldn't hunt coyotes. But the first young man, that was great. Man, that covered things I thought I had thought of and hadn't. I know that this was enacted with the best of intents. Nobody likes a slob hunter. Anything against a slob hunter is great, as far as I'm concerned. And I certainly understand the law enforcement position. What I don't know, and I hadn't talked to any coyote hunter, and that's another thing, there's sight dogs and there's hounds. That's two different things. Sight dogs being greyhounds, hounds being a hound. I haven't talked to a single soul that knew that you could hunt out of a truck with a gun. And I know that there's maybe 3 years old, something like that. I'm amazed that you can. Most people are. But who opened this can of worms? You know? If it was like it always was, where you couldn't shoot out of a truck, this wouldn't have happened. Is this our ag community? Is this the Kansas Livestock Association because the coyote's still demonized like it's the 1700s? Coyote's the greatest game animal there is, in my opinion. I've had ranchers tell me in 4 different states we have more trouble with coyote hunters than we ever had with coyotes. It seems that the deer hunters are taking precedent over the coyote hunters. These guys, as has been pointed out over and over, the true hound man, the true sight dog man, it's a mutually exclusive thing. They're not deer hunting. But we all have to pay the penalty for the few. I personally, I got to where I hunted by myself more and more and more. If we've got to make concessions, then definitely leave out the rifles. Don't have any hunter orange in there. If you have no rifle, I don't know what difference that'd make. You don't have to have a CB radio, and you don't have to hunt with anybody else. Or hell, I can remember when you flashed your lights when you saw a coyote. You didn't have a CB radio. It seems this is only hurting the truly legitimate dog people. It's not hunting. There's 30% of the people that carry dogs that shouldn't even have so much as a goldfish. I mean, we all know that. And the coyote hunters try to regulate and police their own groups. And it don't always work either. Myself and the people that I know, we've always had, during deer season, we've had a rapport with the deer hunters. If they're going to be there, then we're not. Hell, that seems simple enough. You know, if you're in there and one group or the other is surprised, there's somebody that's not supposed to be there. The landowners, you don't go on a place that you're not welcome. I wouldn't go in somebody's house. As far as running over calves, I always felt it was my responsibility to know where the cows were calving. I remember one year, a man that's dead now told me about all the coyotes had been at just one particular place that's close to my house. Didn't you get in there? And I said, no, the cows was calving. Well, that's when you should have been there. Well, I suppose you're right. Somehow or another, it just didn't seem like kosher. You never know. I personally, reluctantly, would feel better if it was closed to everybody again. Why should some be able to kill a coyote and some can't? not that killing the coyote is a be-all, where-all. I don't have any answers, but I do know that I feel that this was, well, that we were not even thought of. We're a tiny minority, but there's a lot of these people that are ranchers, particularly out west, big dry land farmers, and there's a lot of other game comes off of their place that other people get to take advantage of. You know, I don't know. I know it's hard. Colorado passed a law some years ago that there's no hunting out of vehicles, period. And I called a little over a year ago and talked to commission people. I think I talked to one biologist, how they handle it. How I know there's still coyote hunters out there, particularly the east side. I worked all over Colorado. I lived out there. And I never really got a satisfactory answer because I knew these people were there. But this couldn't be legal if you couldn't hunt out of a truck. And you have to hunt. Hell, I've walked when it was wet, a horseback. But you got to transport dogs. And yes, we hunt out of trucks. And yeah, I've gone 40 and 50 mile an hour after a coyote. And I've also walked for miles and miles and miles and didn't even see one. Anyway, I said, I want to talk to a man in the field. And they gave me a man's name named Corey Chick. It's in the southwestern part of Colorado in the huge counties. I said, what do you do? And he said, well, you pretty well, you know, you got a gut feeling. And it's, you know, if they're the same old thing we've gone through, they're carrying guns and this and that, they're probably not coyote hunting. I guess it come down to like the old policeman on his beat of knowing the neighborhood. But did that make it legal? I can't imagine it did. What this is all about is deer seem to take precedence anymore. Through no fault of the deer, everything seems to be about the deer, and it seems like every damn hunting problem we got anymore, there's a deer involved. And that's unfortunate. Very unfortunate. I think we can all live together, but there's people, I suppose the moral here hopefully would be, before you pass a law, make sure who all is being affected by this. And make sure that it's not hitting some guy that totally innocent. And that's what this is. Like I say, there's bad apples out there. And it's kind of always been up to the guys with the sight dogs and the hounds to police their own group. But you can't do all that. But the people that are totally innocent are the ones that are suffering on this, are being stigmatized. And that's all I got. I hope that, hell, there's got to be some way to write this up. Keep the guns out first. That seems the simplest. And just everybody get along.
Thank you, Bill. Randy.
Kevin, is a reasonable way to, an alternative on this, I guess, would be to do this this green vest and no rifles? Is that a reasonable step to take? Let them hunt?
I'd have to give that some consideration. That is something that, you know, that has been brought up.
Wouldn't that be an absolute deterrent, though? I mean, if these guys have to have a green vest, I don't know. I'm kind of searching for a middle ground, because it seems like these guys are going to get punished for something that is undue then, that they're not causing.
I understand that the only thing that I can come back with, just off the cuff, is I know people will do extraordinary things at times to circumvent the law or, you know, make their desire, whatever it be. And so out of a group of hunters, does somebody designate that I'm going to be the person that does one thing or another? I mean,
Okay.
Chris, could we say no firearms in the vehicle?
Well, that's a complex issue, a lot more than I can tell you right now.
I'm looking for a simple answer.
There is no simple answer to that, unfortunately. I mean, you know, the Kansas Constitution has a provision that was recently ratified, probably 4 years ago, that probably, in my estimation, substantially enhanced the firearms possession rights of Kansans. And so I think there are some issues that would have to be looked at pretty hard. You know, again, it's not inherently unlawful to drive around with a rifle in your truck, or a handgun for that matter. And when you talk about a scenario where you're saying, no, if you're coyote hunting, you can't have a rifle, that still doesn't stop the individual from just driving around with a rifle. So, but it's something it's just not an off-the-cuff answer that I can give you without, and you know, again, it's going to be an educated guess, even at best, because there's no case law in the state on that constitutional provision.
I'm just thinking that, I mean, Randy's question was a good one, and if you just prohibited firearms in the vehicles, but when you say it 2 or 3 times out loud, boy, you start affecting a whole lot of people then.
Is there some way we could have the department kind of think about this in light of public comment and see if there is any common ground? Because we think of something quickly here, and then I don't want it to be an issue later because we didn't think of something. And I'm trying to, I understand. The legitimate dog hunter is being punished, and I also believe that the existing laws are allowing people to torment law enforcement and flaunt the rules and create issues. So we didn't, you know, Kevin's people just didn't make it up. It's a real issue that they're having to deal with, yet I've never really heard it from any legitimate dog hunters. I guess I wish there was a way of compromise. I don't know if there is. And it's just, I think it causes all of us a little pause to solve a problem by punishing an innocent group, but or by generally innocent. I mean, there are bad apples everywhere. But I think there is an issue that has to be dealt with.
When do we vote on this?
Yes.
And I realize how far-fetched this is, but why not, the whole thing could be ended, and I'm trying to be objective, not subjective, and say, rescind this idiotic law. Why in the hell did they ever allow? If you couldn't shoot out of the truck, this wouldn't be happening. How did this happen?
Well, I don't know, and maybe somebody could come up with some history, but I don't think we're going to be able to get it done today.
Other than, again, demonizing the coyote and coming up with more creative ways to kill him. What's the point?
I did have one thought as we changed any of these. I keep hearing that we're closing coyote hunting for those 12 days, and that's not what we're saying. We're saying no driving, no shooting from vehicles, and no using radios. Those are the 3 things that I'm reading in here. But another thought that I have is that any change that we make, how do you get those changes out to every coyote hunter in the state? Because it seems like after you make the change, the first year you're going to have people breaking those laws because they don't know what the new law is. So that's just a thought I had, just getting that information.
I have a feeling word's going to get around.
My responsibility as a hunter. These 12 days are like our rut, too. He's a prime time hunting for us coyote hunters. ranchers. I mean, you think about it, this is when it starts getting cold, this is when these coyotes start coming out, these are when these coyotes are going at these cattle and affecting these landowners. That's when we get a lot of our calls also, saying, please come help me. Why should I not be able to provide a service to a landowner during those 12 days that the coyotes are really out and moving, it's cold, and they gotta go hunt? You know, that's a big time for us. So that needs to be a consideration also.
I set my own season because there wasn't one, and I was one of the only people that never hunted into March because I felt the bitches were bred. And I don't know, you don't get your family together in spring, go out and stomp on quail eggs. Same damn thing to me.
Okay.
And so we're talking 4 months for me. And if you only can hunt weekends, you're talking 16 weekends. Okay, so you're gonna take 2 away. You're taking 12.5% of a guy's hunt. How you talk about migratory waterfowl and taking days away? Well, why don't you take those 12 days away from those guys? See if they raise any hell. Post that out, Cheyenne Bombs.
We did, and they were upset.
Yeah, we're down here for a while. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, well, and that keeps coming up. It's only 12 days. Jesus Christ.
Okay. We've got to get ready to move on here. I can see this is going to. Does anybody else on the commission have any more thoughts? I think we know the direction. I mean, we know the issues. Is there anybody that doesn't get it?
I get it. I get it.
And I appreciate, and I've encouraged a lot of you people to come, and I appreciate you coming. But we need to get on to other items on the agenda.
What's the next step that goes to a vote in June? Is that
Gordon said.
Yes.
Do proposals passed here automatically become law, or do they still have to go through the legislature?
No, they become regulation here. All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
So I would like to make one comment.